Jason Murphy, Against the Stream, Wednesday night, getting our Dharma on, getting some meditation. So, last week I was going to finish the talk of working with the kind of three, I don't know if they'd be called the prerequisites or the three, I think the three main focuses of Buddhist practice as far as application goes, not really theory, but application, which we've been talking about generosity, been talking about ethics, and tonight we're going to talk about bhavana or development of mind. So we'll get into that a little bit tonight. Yeah, so anyone, let me see if I can move this to see all your faces. Anyone new? Anyone new to the group that's online? All right. Not seeing any hands going up. So welcome to all those who are returning and those of you in the future who might be observing this on YouTube, on the YouTube Live. Welcome to all of you. Welcome to those of you who are here in the room. It's always nice to have someone to actually talk to that's in the room. So I appreciate you being here during this weird time. Yeah, I was always like avoidant of doing this kind of online type of interaction before this, this pandemic, before this kind of new normal or whatever the hell we're calling it today. But yeah, so it's but I've grown some accustomed to it, and that's interesting to watch. And also it's still nice to have human interaction, so I appreciate that. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So we'll meditate for some time, about 30 minutes or so. Last week we did a body scan meditation, and that seemed to go over really well. People seem to really enjoy that. And today I'm going to move through the 4 foundations of mindfulness, but I'm not going to give a lot of instruction around it, just a little bit of instruction. And so the 4 foundations of mindfulness is kind of what the theme has been for, I don't know, months. I think I've been working on that. I think it's a lifetime really, but it's something I've been focusing on with teachings and practice. And yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll just use a couple different instructions tonight. And the first bit will be really just 3 words: aim, connect, and sustain. And so using aim is aiming the attention, connecting to the experience, really present time experience, and that can be breath, that can be body, that can be sound. Any one of these 3, or really all 3, but I think in the beginning it's helpful to focus, even just to go with what's easiest. So sometimes the breath is just, people just fall in line with the breath and that works easier for them. Great, go with that. If that doesn't, seem to, so, give it a minute or so. If that doesn't seem to be something that's easy to connect to, the experience of breathing, the felt sense of breathing, and I'll go over this a little bit more, then feel free to switch to kind of awareness of the body. And that can be kind of done like what we did last week, where we scanned through the body from feet to head and head to feet, kind of sweeping through. Or it can really just be the felt sense of sitting and feeling the body sitting. Sometimes it actually is, really the chest expanding and contracting, or the shoulders, kind of subtle movement of the body, which is kind of connected to the breath as well, because they're not unrelated. It's all related, right? And then the third kind of present time experience that is going to be helpful for concentration would be sound. And sound, the arising and passing away of sound. Um, Common misunderstanding or misbelief is that sound is a distraction for what's happening, for meditating. And that's just not the reality. The reality is that sound is a part of present time experience. Matter of fact, it's only a part of present time experience. It's only arising in the present moment. And it's arising and it's passing and it's shifting and it's changing. And that can be really interesting. And there's the absence of sound. There's the moments in between, so like here, we're on this main street. Sometimes there's Harleys, sometimes there's trucks peeling out, sometimes there's, people yelling and people yelling at themselves. And, there's a lot going on. And so we can attune to the rise and fall, the shift, the change of breath, of sensations in the body, or of sound. And so that's the kind of first point of aim, connect, sustain. Then, at some point, I'll move to the second set of instructions, which is relax, observe, allow. And I use these two interchangeably, but basically this is kind of my direction to Vipassana. Vipassana meaning insight, or this kind of all-encompassing of the four foundations of mindfulness. So relax is, just kind of like seeing if we can let go of tension, kind of be with whatever the experience is. And when I say that, there can also be a relaxing of the one-pointedness. So if you've been just focusing on the breath, when there's a relax, observe, allow instruction that comes into play, the invitation is to kind of open up your awareness. Sometimes it's called open awareness, where you're just kind of receiving sound, sensation of the body, breath. And it might be where you'll be resting in breath as an anchor, and then a sound will arise that's loud enough or distracting enough that it pulls your attention. And instead of that being a problem, that's just another opportunity to be here, to be present with what's happening in our experience. So there's that. And then maybe there's a sensation, pain in the knee or something in the, whatever the heck's going on in the body, right? So that can also just be, it's an opportunity to then have that be the momentary focus of awareness. So we're not so rigid into it's one way and it's always that way. Although that being said, I just also want to be really clear. Any one of those three you can just rest there too. You can just rest in the breath, and that can be the only object of your meditation, and that's plenty, or being aware of the body. That can be that you can just rest there too. You don't have to tweak it. We don't have to do all kinds of then this and then that and then this, and because it's just really all present time experience. Can we be with what's happening as it's happening, internally, externally? What's happening within me and around me in any given moment? This is part of the instruction. This is kind of my definition of mindfulness. Awareness of what's happening within me and around me in any given moment. So there's that, and then there's some other subtleties that we can move into. Feeling tone, so this understanding of kind of vibrational or felt sense is sometimes the way it's described, and sometimes it's even kind of like an attitude, like if there is a sound that pulls our attention, or a bodily sensation that pulls our attention, can we be with that and recognize what's the, I don't know, you could call it the essence, or what's the feeling tone, is it pleasant, and there's some, maybe either some acceptance or some pleasant experience that comes over the body or the mind? Is it unpleasant, or there's some aversion, there's some resistance, there's some tightening that may happen? Or is it kind of neutral, which is neither pleasant or unpleasant, which actually is really a place of inquiry? It's a place of, can I be neutral? Can I be, this is what we call equanimity. Can we be equanimous with what's happening in our experience and not have it be like there's these big waves? Of course, that takes a while, and it's not always easy to see because we're so addicted to pleasant and unpleasant. We're just literally jumping from pleasant experience, experiencing unpleasant experience, and then pulling away from it, and then jumping to the next pleasant experience pretty much all day long, even in our dreams. So that being said, we'll just kind of work with that. It was kind of a long-winded introduction, but that's good. Sometimes we need that. All right, so finding a posture that's workable, that's sustainable, where you can be relaxed and alert. Welcome to anyone else who has arrived. All right. It's helpful to allow the eyes to close or be downcast. And just resting in this moment, like arriving, even setting some intention for this meditation. May I be present for each breath, for each moment. May I return with kindness. May I accept things as they are. Some kind of intention. May I become fully awakened in this sit. And then hearing the bell. So just utilizing that first set of instructions to aiming the attention towards this present time experience. Connecting to one of the anchors, or meditation objects, whether it be breath, the experience of breathing, or sound, the arising and passing and absence of sound, or the body, the sensations of the body. It's suggested to choose one for a time, and then sustain that connection. course, the mind may wander off. That's not a problem. It's just what minds do: think, plan, remember. Whenever we recognize that the attention has wandered off, just aim the attention back with that sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind. Connect to the experience of breath or body or sound, and then try to sustain that connection for as long as possible. returning again and again to this instruction. Aim, connect, sustain. again and again. Recognizing when the attention perhaps wandered off, with that sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind. Aim, connect, sustain. again and again. Recognizing what's happening here, this breath, this sitting, breathing body. Is there aversion? Is there fantasy, pleasure seeking, neutrality? The invitation is to shift slightly the attitude of practice, utilizing the instructions, relax, observe, allow, relaxing into each new breath, observing what arises in the heart, in the mind, the sense doors, seeing if we can move from the subjective to the objective. Can we just observe even the mind without getting caught or lost? And can we allow whatever experience we're having to arise, stay for a time, and pass away, as all things do? Relax, observe, allow. Relax. Observe. Allow. Each breath, each moment as it is. For these last few moments before the bell rings, the invitation is to let go. Let go of effort, let go of practice, let go of instructions. Just be open here. Okay. Oh, that's so much better. So I guess just to open up to questions about that practice. Did anything come up for you? Kind of have a brief share about it. I'm going to move into the topic in a few minutes. But before we transition into more of the topic, any questions about the instructions, or does anyone want to kind of share what that experience was like for them? Difficulties, positives, things that went well. You just need to raise your little blue hand that's in, I think it's in the more category in your chat box, or it's just in your chat box. Well, okay. We'll have another opportunity to open up to some questions in a bit. So I'll just kind of jump right in. To me, the Dharma is like all inclusive. There's not like at least within this, American Buddhism, Theravadan, against the stream. I don't know. There's all kinds of friggin' labels, but what we do here, and in the Thai forest tradition, in the lineage that we have trained in, it's just the all. Sometimes it's even called the all. It's considered the all. So one of the things I love about like the Eightfold Path is it doesn't really matter where you start, that you're gonna eventually, they're all gonna kind of spiral in, and it's kind of like even just in this practice, like doing the first part of relax, observe. I mean, the first part of aim, connect, sustain. The idea there is to have a refining of the mind, a training, a renunciation, if you will. We're renouncing letting our minds run the show. And we're learning to tame or to train the mind so that it can be more workable, more user-friendly, if you will. It's like defragging the CPU. That's the way I kind of view the first part. And then once we're able to do that, then we can kind of rest in, all of what the kind of, but maybe what the Dharma preaches or promises is this kind of resting in open awareness and seeing things as they are, and actually allowing that to be beautiful, allowing that to be peaceful, allowing that to be the natural peace and ease that is the natural peace and ease of the mind. So, there's all these different lists of teachings, and we have some order to it because, we have the left side of our brain is very fucking linear, and we're here in the West are pretty linear and categorical, and so it has just kind of evolved that way, and it's skillful means, as they say. So the teaching that I've been kind of working through is maybe it's what was called the preliminary teachings, sometimes the prerequisites, and that's generosity, uh, ethical integrity, and then bhavana, or meditation technique. And it was taught that way, and it still is taught that way. In tons of countries, and I was just listening to this monk, this Western monk in Thailand, talking about addiction and pornography, which I'll probably post on my Facebook, because it was a pretty addiction, pornography, and masturbation. This monk in Thailand, and it was pretty good. About a 30-40 minute talk. But one of the things that he said was that, so many people who call themselves Buddhist or who practice really don't even get to the development of mind, that they really, and this was taught for generations, is that if you're not a monk, just work on being generous and being ethical. And that's maybe kind of the best you can do. And for those who want to, then it's the next level of developing the mind, meditative practices. And unfortunately, even in some parts of Asia, and even within, and here I think in the States too, monastics even, in several traditions, don't meditate. It's just not the emphasis. The emphasis is service. The emphasis is teaching. The emphasis is scholarly kind of learning. Yet the practical application of what we do here is free the mind. And how do you do that? By applying the teachings, applying the practices. Now, applying it in all three ways: through the use of generosity, through ethical integrity, and then through the development of mind. So, I spent quite a bit of time talking about generosity, and so that's recorded, and you can check it out if you missed it. But just to kind of go over, like, what do we mean by ethical integrity? What did the Buddha set out as the practice, the work for us to do? Well, it's really actually, a lot of it's about karma. This idea of karma. How do we recognize, or how do we experience karmic momentum? How do we create karmic momentum? How do we change karmic momentum? So the essence of what I see is that the Buddha was pretty clear, like, follow these 5 precepts, these 5 kind of agreements, and you will suffer less. And if you don't follow these 5, you will surely cause suffering for yourself. I mean, it's just kind of that straightforward. And so what are those? Well, they're non-harming, as a protection for ourselves, taking refuge, setting clear intention of non-harming, not taking life. And Thich Nhat Hanh's kind of twist on that is to protect life, which I actually kind of like, because it's more engaging. It's like saying, I'm going to engage in protecting life. And that means not taking life, not causing the harm or the karmic implication of what that might mean. The other, well, there's a few of them. So then there's intentional killing, stealing, having harmful sexual intentions or actions, being wise with speech, and not taking intoxicants. These are considered the 5 agreements, the 5 renunciations, the 5 places to watch how we interact, and to discern for ourselves whether doing these things, because we're gonna miss the mark. I missed the mark. I've been doing this over 2 decades. I still miss the mark. I still get pissed off. I still, will yell at people in traffic. I don't jump out of the car and, pull them out the window anymore. Like, I don't do that. I don't. I was watching like some YouTube. I don't know. It was like 2 a.m. I haven't been able to sleep, and I was watching some YouTube of like crazy car interactions, and like, so people that are pissed off on the highway or get cut off and then follow and then jump out and then they're boxing on the side of the street. And I was like, it was just like some 2 a.m. entertainment, but it was also I was like reflecting on, yeah, I don't do that anymore. Like it's been, God, maybe 20 years since I've done that. And that's a big that's a big change. you know. And then all of these other ones, harmful with sexual intentions or wise speech or not taking intoxicants. Um, all these things are to be reflected upon. What is your relationship to them? These 5 precepts, this ethical integrity, living in an ethically integrous way, based on the Buddhist perspective, the Buddhist teachings, is entirely possible. It's entirely possible to live with these standards. It's not always easy or convenient, but it's entirely possible. This is what I found to be true. This is what I think many other people have found to be true. And this is what the Buddha taught as a way of living as a non-monastic. So the view of kind of wise action is kind of one that I prefer, like wise with sexual energy, wise with intoxicants, because we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're engaging in relation, which might actually be a huge cause of suffering for ourselves or for others. But to learn to be wise with that sexual energy, to be wise with that intention, to be non-harming to ourselves or to others, is a skill to be learned. And then also the same thing with intoxicants. Not every person on the planet is going to become a drug addict and alcoholic, or lose everything and shoot heroin, and that's just not the reality. Yet there's a huge debate particularly amongst American Buddhists, but other traditions. I think the Theravadan tradition is fairly clear: no intoxicants. If you engage in intoxicants, you are clouding the mind. And then there's online debates. People say all kinds of shit online, right? But there's like this, well, caffeine's an intoxicant and TV's an intoxicant, and yeah, so be wise about your consumption, right? And it's like, yeah, it's not like smoking crack, but what's your relationship to it? Does it cause harm? Does it cause suffering? Does it cause depression? Is there more withdrawal? So I do like this idea of to be wise with intoxicants. And even, there are people who are going to engage in drinking or, smoking weed or cigarettes, or, I engage in nicotine use. I'm sure there's some karmic implications. But anyway, so I just wanted to kind of cover that. And I wanted to just kind of also talk about how one of the ways that we talk about the precepts is that they're practical, right, which I've been kind of talking about, clear cut, and they're humanistic in nature. They're really about kind of the betterment of humanity, not just the betterment of me and mine, because that, but betterment of all of us. There's more of a altruistic view. All right, so I think I'm going to move on from there. And I guess I just wanted to talk that much more about viewing the precepts as really preparatory. There's a whole other group of teachings that talk about how when we break these precepts, when we don't follow these precepts, that we're creating wounds in the mind. And that the beginning, and for some people, depending on their sila, right, or dana, their generosity, or their ethical integrity, there could be more. It's more difficult to settle the mind, to get through that kind of aim, connect, sustain, that preparing the collecting and preparing the attention, because we have to then be confronted. So much of what happens for when we do meditation, particularly when we're doing the heart practices, as you've maybe found out, we get confronted with all of the ways that maybe we're not generous, maybe we are greedy or miserly, or maybe we are, aversive, or have ill will or resentment, or maybe the things that we've repressed, the memories that we've repressed, the traumas in our history, there's that we're actually being confronted with that. And if you've sat for any length of time, you've been confronted with some of that. And if you haven't, you're either falling asleep or you're not actually paying attention, right? So it's pretty clear to me, I mean, in the years that I've been teaching and practicing, that this is a byproduct, and it's part of the preparatory process. Now, what the Buddha teaches and what most of the Dharma teaches is there's so much more beyond that. On Monday, those of you who were here or online, Noah was talking about, the iceberg, and how, there's 10% of an iceberg is above water. And in some ways, that's really what we're just kind of dealing with. And then the more that we can learn to calm the mind, learn to meditate, learn to live through an ethical kind of lens, the lower, we drop the water line, and the more is revealed. And then in the deeper depths of, the iceberg that we call, this kind of heart mind, this existence, it's sometimes that seems really scary to people, because it's dark and it's cold and it feels unobtainable. But the more that we're dropping the water line, the more that we're actually able to see and process and work with. And this is, moving us to, the meditative development. So just to kind of say a few things. So the word bhavana, or bhavana could be called, means development. It's just, that's the term that is the Buddha spoke about when he spoke about developing the mind. And the kind of direct translation is development of skillful qualities in the mind. That bhavana is a type of karma, the intentional activity ultimately leading to the end of karma, right? But karma nonetheless. So that kind of learning to develop the mind is, in some people call it kind of burning off karma, or really dealing with all the shit that we've been avoiding, which is so much of the cause of why we suffer in the first place, right? Maybe you've heard me say, or maybe not, that I really view all of the Buddhist teachings as what he's saying in all this present time experience is, see clearly what's happening in your experience within you and around you in any given moment, and learn, and then be present for that. Whether it sucks and it's super fucking painful, or it's beautiful and it's super fucking pleasant, or it's neutral, be present for it, and then move to the next moment. And then you're clean in the next moment if we process what's happening. But that's not our tendency, right? And it's not our fault. That's the other thing. It's not our fault. It's not our tendency. We avoid shit that's painful, and there's some psychological reasons why that's possible. At 10 years old, I wasn't able to process some of the shit that was going down in my life. So I learned to shut it down, right? Avoid it, stuff it. Later on in life, particularly when I started meditating, not at 16, 17, but later, like in my early 20s, that I began to kind of have to deal with what was going on just below the surface of the iceberg of my experience. And this bhavana helps us to do that. So another way it's kind of described is, the work at hand. And there's a term in Thai, to make an effort. This kind of instruction of that's what's asked of us, to make an effort, or to apply wise effort. So some of the other ways to look at kind of bhavana is to counterbalance the common assumption. This whole make an effort is to counterbalance the common assumption that meditation is an exercise in inaction or in passivity, right? The all-encompassing kind of acceptance of, woo-woo and, oh, let's just let things wash over us. Like, I don't know, like we're just going to float away. That's not actually what's happening. This is a very engaged practice. It's very active. And if you sat, then if you've spent any time even just trying to follow the breath, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, calming the mind, breathing out, relaxing the body, any of those sustained efforts are challenging. So, this is a very proactive process. It has an agenda, and it works actively to bring it about. And this is to purify the mind, to awaken, to gain insight, to heal the wounds of the mind. And by mind, I mean mind, heart, our emotional self, our psychological self. That's what's to be done here. So this can be described in like kind of how we talk about right mindfulness in the Satipatthana Sutta, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where it says, this is the only way, it says monks, but really the Buddha's talking to all of us. This is the only way, monks, for the purification of beings, for the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, for the destruction of pain and grief, for reaching the right path, for the attainment of nibbana, namely the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So what does that mean? So what does that mean? Like, this is the path, this is the right path, this is the purification of mind. Well, here's another kind of quote from the Buddha. A meditator remains, so this is the actual instruction. This is like what the Buddha said about how to get free. A meditator remains focused on the body in and of itself, ardent, alert, and mindful, putting aside greed and distress with reference to the world. A meditator remains focused on the body in and of itself, first foundation of mindfulness, breath, body awareness, ardent, alert, and mindful, putting aside greed and distress with reference to the world. And that doesn't mean just let all that shit go, but it does mean like, let's not stay in the 10%. Let's drop down. Let's see what else is happening here, right? What else can we see? Let's wake up from the matrix, so to speak, to use a mid-90s reference. I think it was mid-90s. So let's break that down a little bit. Remain focused can also be translated as keeping track, which is something that we're doing. We're keeping track as we're using aim, connect, sustain, or relax, observe, allow even, is keeping track of what's happening in our experience. So much of, what we're doing in mindfulness is we're trying to keep the attention on the object. And then the attention is going to move off. And then we recognize that that the attention has moved off, and we put it back. And we try to kind of keep it balanced there. And then it's going to not get moved off again. And this is, the keeping track. We're trying to keep track. And then at some point we keep track of where the mind goes. Oh, where does it go? Oh, it goes to the future. 90% of the time, or oh, it goes to the past 80% of the time. Like I'm always living in the past, rehashing, rehearsing, feeling remorse and regret, and then that overwhelms me in the present. Or I'm feeling, anxious and worried and anticipatory about the future. Right? So we start to begin to see this as we're using this kind of keeping track. Okay, so ardent. I had to look that word up. Ardent refers to the effort that you put into the practice, right? Trying to abandon unskillful states of mind, and develop skillful ones, or skillful states. So another aspect of this, the Buddha is pointing to what's called akusala, skillful and unskillful states of mind. So by being able to keep track, and this kind of gathering and seeing where our mind gets distracted, and then just as an aside, it's not in this particular quote, but sati, or mindfulness, means to remember or recollect. So to remember, like when we're lost, to remember, oh yeah, here, now, perfect, you're doing it right, that's exactly right, that's what we're doing. We do that, 3,576 times. And then you might be able to sustain your attention in the present moment for 5 minutes, and that's the training. That's the practice. That's what being ardent is. It's like, keep going, Alert, right? Alert means, being clear, aware of what's happening in the present. Mindful. Oh, I jumped ahead. Mindful means, being able to remember or to recollect. Sometimes mindfulness can be translated as a non-reactive awareness, right? Free from agendas, simply present with whatever arises, which is kind of what I was pointing to earlier. Non-reactive awareness is actually part of equanimity, one of many qualities kind of fostered in this course of the Satipatthana. But the ardency involved in the Satipatthana, definitely, or the four foundations of mindfulness, definitely has an agenda, a task to be done. While the role of mindfulness is to keep your task in mind. So we're there. This what's to be done that's also another way of talking about karma. Karma is action. So we're being ardent, we're alert, we're also kind, compassionate to when we fall off, when we lose track, when we don't want to meditate for a week, when we're hard on ourselves, when the critic takes over, when the tyrant of our mind just goes like, you're a fucking asshole, like why are you living, which for some people that is very real. Okay. So this teaching is designed, to help a practitioner, to help a meditator lessen suffering and gain clarity of mind while developing generosity, non-clinging to greed, and living day to day in the way of non-harming to self and to others. And so in this way, these three teachings together, they're fundamental. And so often people want to just jump into the meditation, which is great. Like, start wherever your entry point is. Sometimes people want to read 25 books before they start to meditate. Great. Whatever your approach is, keep going. Yeah. So I think that's going to be enough for now of this topic, at least in what I have to say. And what I'll do now is, open up for some questions. Whether you're in the room and you have a question, or you're at home. And all you need to do, or even if you want to just kind of share something, and all you need to do is raise your little blue hand, and then if you're out there in the interwebs, or in the room. Yeah. Mike.
Thanks, Jason. For some reason, like what you're talking about tonight makes me think of, old mindsets in my life where I would be like, if only things were like this, if only people would listen to this, if only this would happen, if only if this person was in charge, if only this, like all of that, all of those mindsets and ways of thinking. But I read, you talked about equanimity, like you touched on it briefly, and I read a quote today that I thought was really good. It says, every moment of equanimity is a moment of waking up from the delusion that things should be as we want them to be.
Yeah.
And that hit me like a ton of bricks today, that, acceptance on, life on life's terms. And, I've been in AA for a long time, and I put that into my life, but I feel like, with mindfulness and the Dharma too, I feel like that's where there's like a link there, like through the Dharma feels the same way. Like it's life on life's terms, and we need to be mindful of that. And the only way out of suffering is that acceptance and that mindfulness and finding that middle path. And I couldn't help but think your teaching tonight just made that come into my mind. It made me think of how I used to be so stubborn in that sense. And now today I'm being more open-minded and more mindful and more accepting of things, of life on life's terms. I mean, that doesn't I don't have to agree with how things are, and I can, try to work to make them better and, spread esteemable acts in all directions and do the best I can. I want to do that. But I find that like acceptance and equanimity are really comforting, because it just takes away a lot of suffering and a lot of agony, might be the better word. So that's all I got. Thank you for tonight.
Yeah. No, thank you. Exactly. Well said. Whatever the doorway is, whether it's some kind of a 12-step program, or whether it's, having death in our lives, or, ODing, or going to rehab, or, waking up, first of all, to the fact that we are even suffering. And, some of us really know that, but we just get stuck in the suffering. I knew I was suffering for a long time. I just didn't really know. I wasn't like, oh yeah, this is suffering. Like I was just like, the world sucks and everyone sucks and fuck everyone. And I'm gonna, whatever, act out in every single way to try to avoid, instead of, what you're talking about, like kind of, using mind, like all the things that we're talking about, right? Mindfulness, generosity, compassion, acceptance, balance, finding balance, cultivating emotional balance is one of my favorite ways to kind of think about it right now. What's the ultimate goal? It's not to be free from emotion. Sometimes that's what people think about, like the Dharma, meditation, the Buddha, who didn't have any kind of emotional states. He was just like, like being Zen is just like, I don't even know. I can't even, like this levitative, but that's not the reality. The reality and is that it's really about, can we be balanced, which is what equanimity is: balanced heart mind, appropriate, having the appropriate emotion for the appropriate situation. And that doesn't even mean like not getting angry. Getting angry is okay. What we do with that anger, that's the place to pay attention. You know, I used to get really angry and didn't know what else to do besides like break shit or yell or fight or get drunk, or like I just didn't have any other skills. And you know like you're kind of saying, AA, and then Buddhism gave me whole different levels of skills, and same with the refuge recovery program, just whole different levels of skills. So thanks for sharing that. All right, anything else people want to bring up about even the meditation instruction? How was that? Got a few more minutes. Or the question about what we're talking about? All right. You guys are going to be quiet. We'll end. Thank you so much for your time and attention, for being here. Rachel just put up the againstthestream.com is a place where you can make donations. Also, you can register for the other Zoom classes that we have if you can't make it in person. Otherwise, you're welcome to be here in person.